Businesses are fleeing Seattle due to government-created crime, taxes, policies, and regulations. For example, 1/3 of all office space in Seattle is vacant. 1/3. And now the Seattle mayor has proposed a vacancy tax on building owners. So they've created the problem. Now they're going to tax you on it. Sounds insane, doesn't it? That's Washington. Stick around. We got lots more. All right, don't worry. We have a solution for you, but it's not for everyone. We are actively attracting like-minded people to North Idaho. You have to share our values, share our politics, and have a love and taste for freedom. We want you. Our team, our real estate team, is all former public safety and veterans, and we get calls, texts, emails every single day from people like you trying to escape tyranny and find freedom. If you guys are interested in getting that conversation started, shoot us a call, text, or email. We got you covered on this end. Okay, hey, so here's the deal. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about the big elephant in the room, which is the wonderful income tax, the millionaire's tax, right? It's just for millionaires, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, it's you're talking about State Bill 6346, and what's wild is I know we've had BZ on the podcast before, and he was talking about how Washington was able to erode away gun rights for the citizens there, but they couldn't do it directly because the Washington State Constitution was strong, actually stronger than our national Constitution to protect people's gun rights. So they went around it and went after manufacturers. The way they did this was very similar to that. It was kind of touted as being an amendment to the Washington State Constitution. It's not. What they did is they created a new RCW, which is wild because there's an existing RCW 1.90.100 that says a tax on or measured by net income may not be imposed by the state. That's already there.
Pretty clear.
So SB 6346 carves out a separate section under 82A, which is a different section of there. It says subsection of this section does not apply to the tax authorized in Chapter 82A. So they amended it and then created this entire different thing, which allows them to create a state income tax.
Sneaky. But it's okay, right? It's only going to affect the Bill Gates out there, the millionaires, right?
Oh, man. What's so difficult about this is it's relying so much on the altruism and reasonableness of politicians because this entire thing can be manipulated. For right now, it doesn't require a vote by citizens at all. They can adjust that fluctuation. It says right now it's for millionaire earners. But at what point did they look at it and say, well, we have a huge shortfall right now and we aren't generating enough taxes? They can just go in and adjust it.
I'm going to give it 2 years.
Yeah.
And then they'll lower it to incomes of $500,000 or more.
Right.
And then a couple more years after that, it'll drop to like $150,000. So it's coming. There's no doubt about it.
Here's what's even wilder about this, dude. Like, you deep dive how Ferguson's response to this. Number one, he campaigned against doing this exact thing. We had Linda Wilson on here, and she said she thought Bob Ferguson was worse than Jay Inslee, and then explained that he's a lot sneakier and smarter. And I absolutely believe that now. After this went through and passed and was on his desk to be signed, he intentionally held off on signing it for a period of time to try to ensure that people couldn't go back after the fact and file what they'd call, he delayed signing until the last possible moment to shrink the window for a voter initiative and referendum. Not only that, but the bill includes an emergency clause that blocks a simple referendum. So you didn't vote for this. By and large, the polling was very much opposed to a state income tax. They've tried to pass this 10 times since 1932, and Washington citizens have shut it down every single time. This time, they didn't even allow them to vote. And when polls came out and were in staunch opposition to it, and by staunch opposition during legislative hearings, there was more than 116,000 citizens that signed in opposition, in comparison to 12,600 that were in favor.
I know what's best for you, people of Washington.
You don't know.
Peasants.
Yes. You don't know what's good for you.
Now, I mean, if this money went to, battle crime or fix roads, well, it's still a lot of taxes, but maybe people would be less opposed to it. But what's the ranking of Washington for crime state by state? Are they
fourth.
number 4? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Number 4. In contrast, Idaho is number 50.
Number 1 is bad on the stat sheet. Number 1 is bad.
Yeah, 50's
yes.
good.
Yes.
1 is bad. So Washington's in at number 4, which means that your tax dollars over there, I don't know what they're going to, probably Green New Deal nonsense.
Oh, they're
or needles for homeless people. I don't know.
I have an insider that's in the medical industry over there, and there are a lot of programs geared to, I think you would find a whole lot of fraud, much as they have in California and Minnesota. And better health care than any of us get for people that are undocumented. That is absolutely a part of it. I don't care what he says. We can leave some of that in the notes if you'd really like to go review.
Well, good for them.
I know. But I totally agree with you, dude, and I brought this up with other people several times. If you lived in a community where you can walk outside and it's clean, and you go downtown and there's not people that are, a huge homelessness problem, people screaming and doing the tweaker dance in the middle of the street, you can trust the education system. Your kids are being, they're receiving a good, valid education. The roads are decent. There's not potholes all over the place. And in general, you feel safe in your community, and it seems to be managed fairly well, and there's like a strong community connection. People will pay higher taxes.
Yeah.
But in our country, we don't see that. Where do you get those things?
Idaho, but you pay less taxes.
Yeah, but you pay less. So how does that make any sense?
It doesn't.
That's why I think we're getting so much frustration. And for a few of our listeners out there, they said this to me just a couple of weeks ago. They're like, you know what resonated with me when you guys were on here talking about how the people that pay the largest majority are the ones that use the least services. Mm-hmm. They're not a burden on the justice system.
Right.
They're not a burden on the parks. They're not a burden on the roads. They're not they're not a burden on the housing programs or the mental health or drug rehab or any of that. But they're going to pay the highest. At some point in time, you just don't. It's just not worth it.
It is not. And, we say this a lot. We're not trying to trash talk on Washington. The people in Washington, by and far, are amazing people. A lot of them are fed up. We get calls all the time about this, thinking about relocating, even people that have been there generations, and they're just done. And that sucks. I understand that feeling. I came here from California. I know how that feels to watch the downfall of your state. And yeah, this is a little bit of a sales pitch, I'll be honest, but it's only for, like I said, only for the right people, because if you want to come here and make it like Washington or California or Oregon, we don't want you. We like the way it is here. We want to raise our kids here. The values match our values. It is clean. It is safe. We want to keep it that way. But we understand people are going to come here because the cat is out of the bag. So it is important that we attract the right people here.
I'm glad that you brought up sometimes it's multiple generations. We talk to Bill Kirk frequently. Yep. He long says, I think he's 6th or 7th generation Washingtonian. So last year, House Bill 1869, you're talking about estate taxes. It raised the eligible level of the estate taxation from $2.2 million to $3 million. So at the $3 million mark, it jumps from 20% to 35%. It's the largest single year increase in history. So if you're one of those in $3 million, if you're on Lake Washington and your family's owned it for 70 years,
right,
that's nothing. Like truly everything over there, $3 million.
So the government's going to take $1 million of your money.
35%, that's just off the top. And that's not even getting into real estate excise tax, because Washington has that too.
1%, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Washington has that too. So that automatically ticked people off. But what they snuck in 2026 was State Bill 6347 that says that it's frozen at $3 million, right? So it's like a stealth tax increase because there will be more states over time as inflation goes up. It'll just catch, right? Because that $3 million, look at the inflation we've experienced in the last 10 years. So now they get to freeze it, and there's no adjustment for inflation. So it's just more states that will be subject to it in the future. There's a lot of subversive, crazy stuff when you deep into this. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is chess, not checkers. They're just effing with your money.
So, I mean, the argument we've heard many times with people that are considering moving somewhere, well, Washington doesn't have an income tax. But if you look at individual tax burden, Idaho ranks much better
11th
than Washington, right?
Yep. It was 11th. And the highest subcategory for Idaho taxes, and this is on irs.gov, you can look it up per state, and that's with our state income tax. And that was ranking Washington before they had a state income tax. And Washington ranked 45th out of 50. So, and in that category, that's bad.
That's bad.
Yeah, 50 is bad. And the biggest Yeah, like little subcategory for Idaho was actually unemployment insurance because our population's lower, so it's more of a 1-for-1. So it's not spread out amongst all the individuals. That was like the highest subcategory.
I mean, just look at gas prices, man. There's a great indicator, right? You jump the border from Washington, Liberty Lake, over to State Line, Idaho, and you're dropping $1 at least, on average, about $1 a gallon in gas.
Well, that's why I live over by State Line, and you go to Maverick and just eyeball the plates that are over there.
They're all Washington, right?
Oh, yeah, but Washington, was it 58 cents per gallon they charge over there just for that? And that wasn't enough, so now they're taxing vehicles that don't use fuel. It's more like a transportation tax. So even if you went to the like green safe cars, they're going to get you for that too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, California's doing the same thing, I think, right now, where they pushed you to electric vehicles, and now they're going to charge for mileage or whatever. It's like, okay.
But that's where it gets wild, man, because I think I spent a little time getting more familiar with the B&O taxes, because you hear that and you don't really understand what that is, like business and operating expenses, right? They're payroll expense and B&O hikes. What's happened in the last couple of years? This is effective on July 1st of 2026. There's a 5% tax on wages above $125,000 if you're working for a company that has 20 plus employees and $5 million in gross receipts. That sounds like a lot of money. Everybody thinks, oh, it's like Amazon, Microsoft. They can afford all that. But 20-plus employees at $5 million in gross receipts?
It's not that much.
That's not a big margin, bro.
Right.
That you're still talking about, like, how many business owners do we have over there? I think about the ones that make boats.
Yep.
That's going to be them.
Oh, yeah.
Abso-freaking-lutely, that's going to be them. And they're not a huge company. So they want to charge just straight by the state. If you're paying somebody $125K, which to me is livable wages if you live in Western Washington, just to register your freaking car. But they're going to take 5% out of the business side. Do you think that's just going to profits? Where does that come from?
That's crazy.
That's decreasing the opportunity to expand. It's decreasing the opportunity to hire more employees. And then it's going to a state that's proving that it has no idea what to do with the money because your crime rate sucks.
That is why we're getting a lot of businesses that are reaching out to us as well.
Yes.
And we will recruit the hell out of businesses, like bringing good businesses, especially in that category, 20 employees, right? That's still a mom and pop business in my mind, right?
Same.
And we want you. Come here. Post Falls is ripe for that right now.
Yeah.
We will connect you with the mayor of Post Falls, and he would love to have a conversation about bringing your business to Idaho.
Yes. And honestly, if I was king of the mountain for a day, I would look at it big picture. If you're governor and higher up in the state, I'd look at something like if I'll just hit one like Aero Precision, right? They're over there in Tacoma.
Let's go. You've been called out.
Yeah, but truly, like you'd look at somebody like that. It's a huge capital expense to have the facilities they have there, and it has to be could you imagine uprooting all of that, thinking about buying land here, which is going to be expensive, and you got to recreate the facility, and then you have to do all those things. But for the state of Idaho, imagine if you could subsidize that and reduce the state-related taxes in some way, or streamline the process to allow them to build, because then it would be good manufacturing jobs for our kids. We get to retain a lot of our own talent. That's where I would look at it.
Yeah.
I'm not.
And selfishly, we love guns. So, I mean, if you have a firearms manufacturing company or anything related to that, come on over. Let's go.
Do you want a stamp made in Tacoma, Washington, or do you want a stamp made in Post Falls, Idaho?
Right. Come on.
You tell me.
Come on.
Yeah, you just step North Idaho. Just
how
put
would that sell?
Freaking made in North Idaho.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Yes.
So those are some of the hidden taxes, those B&O taxes, because don't think that doesn't come back to bite the citizens there.
Right.
Like I said, it just thwarts expansion for the business, because look at ours, bro. We have 10 employees now.
Yeah.
10 employees. Like we're right there.
Yeah.
That is not that is not some large. Don't mix that up with Amazon and Starbucks and Meta, who are leaving, by the way. They're leaving Seattle. Because Seattle's tax, tail wags the dog. I always say that, right? Seattle, Olympia do that. But now they're actually leaving Seattle to go to Bellevue, because Bellevue is a lot less restrictive, even though it's still in Washington. It still sucks. But
I would be nervous to own commercial real estate in Seattle right now. I mean, with a vacancy of a third, 35-point-something% vacant.
I read a stat that commercial property in the last 5 years has decreased in value by more than 10%, than an estimated $5.1 billion loss, because of, you were bringing it up. What was the vacancy rate?
It's like 35%. It's a third.
Yeah.
Is vacant of all commercial property in downtown Seattle. That's stunning.
35.6. It's a record high. The top 10 buildings lost greater than 50% of assessed value since 2021. Holy crap. 50% of assessed value since 2021, $3.7 billion total loss.
But hey, it's okay. The Seattle mayor has a plan for this. She's going to tax you when you're having vacant buildings. So that's cool. Like, she'll tax them, and then that'll push them to make them not vacant, right? But it's hard to make them not vacant because no one wants to be there in their business.
It is your fault for investing in downtown Seattle commercial real estate. So if you can't fill it with a renter willing to pay those rates, we're going to further tax you. Even though you're already losing the potential income of the rental, we're going to further tax you for vacancy because now we've got a shortfall. That's what they're saying. They're saying there's a help plug the $140 million 2027 budget gap. Let's not look at policies that would actually encourage businesses to come back downtown. Let's just further tax the people that own it because they're all rich, right?
Yeah,
they're all rich.
It's fine.
Oh,
it's rich
yeah,
people.
It's fine. Absolutely.
And then the icing on the cake is that these business owners are being fined when homeless people occupy their vacant property.
Oh, yeah.
So we have vacant property because the policies are driving businesses out. Then we're getting taxed on that, potentially. And we're also facing fines because we are somehow allowing the crippling homeless population and drug addicts to occupy that then property, and that's our fault somehow. That's not, policies, and this is no blame on the police department. There's some great people working over there. I know that. It's the policies that is driving the way they deal with crime.
Yeah, and you bring up dealing with crime. There is another bill that passed, State Bill 5974. It's the sheriff decertification bill.
That one is absolutely terrifying, and it should be to everyone out there. Sheriffs are the last line of defense when it comes to the Constitution.
And you elect them. Mm-hmm. Each county, it's really important, and I can't remember the word Daniel used on the podcast, but it was great, where you talk about how each county has its little bit of autonomy within the state. And each state within the country has its own autonomy. That's why we are a republic. We're a series of nation states where each state kind of gets to decide how they operate. And I can't think of anywhere else in the country where you've got two states in diametric opposition to one another than Washington and Idaho.
Right.
And you feel it. That's why here is so crazy, because you feel it when you go over into Spokane. You can just watch the difference in policy. But each county gets to elect their highest ranked law enforcement officer. Now, in the state, it allows an unelected state board to automatically remove elected sheriffs without voter recall or a new election.
So if they don't toe the line that the state board likes,
yes,
they can remove them, even though they were duly elected by the population.
And they could be wildly popular there.
That alone is probably the scariest thing to come out of all of this.
Yeah, that's like the hidden one, because everybody's talking about the income tax.
Right.
But you want to talk about eroding your individual rights and freedom? You're allowing that Olympia and Ferguson to completely control the entire state. Because there's a lot of parts of Washington that are just country. I mean, they're blue collar, they like hunting, they like fishing, all of those things. But no, that's not good enough. We are absolutely going to control everything that you do. And if your sheriff doesn't toe our line or do what we want them to do, we're just going to have a board over here that I'm sure will be completely independent and well qualified to judge whether or not a sheriff is doing a job. Because that's tough. It's not just about policies of law enforcement. That's the point. It's, are they upholding the Constitution? And whose interpretation of the Constitution?
And my question to that would be, what happens when they remove this sheriff? Do they get to appoint the next one, or does it go back to an election?
The valid question, and I don't know the answer.
I don't know the answer to that either.
There would have to be an interim. It would probably be like it is now if you remove one, because it's not new that a sheriff can get removed by like a post-decertification process, but usually it's like incidents of gross negligence or fraud or some sort of criminal that would no longer qualify them as a peace officer in the state. Mm-hmm. But this is just flat out like you can go decertify them. And it's starting with everyone has to go through the certification process to begin with. So now if you know you have to go through that certification process, are you going to be as hardline on crime as you said you were going to be in order to get elected?
It really depends on their character and why they want to be there, right? I could see that influencing the way people make decisions.
Oh, there's some sheriffs out there just getting it with this.
Yeah.
And they're awesome. They are absolutely pasting what's Keith Swank with Pierce County is one of them. He's all over it. Here's what frustrates me about this, bro. A number of things that are absolutely terrible. But both of these, they've already filed, even though in this, we go back to the income tax real quick. In that bill, they include an emergency clause that blocks a simple referendum. So after he delayed the whole thing, he blocked it. Let's Go Washington immediately sued to force a ballot vote and challenge the clause. This is going to court, right? This is absolutely going to court. So's the one with the sheriffs.
I hope it gets overturned.
So do I, but what's it going to cost?
Oh, yeah.
And who foots the bill?
Right.
Washington taxpayers foot the bill.
So they're footing the bill on, say, the income tax that they voted against, and yet Bob tried to push through.
Yes, that
Now
they
they're
didn't
paying for it.
That they didn't vote for.
Which we know lawyers. It's going to be, it ain't cheap.
No.
Millions.
And then they're going to turn around, even if you win. Do you win? There were rights that should have always been theirs in the first place.
Right.
Then you're talking about sheriffs that you elected. They're going to fight this like crazy, and they should. But now they're going to come back and go, nah, you guys need to foot the bill for this, too, even though you didn't vote for it.
And the ideology is not going away. Whether they win this time or not, they're going to keep trying. And they will wear everyone down because that's how it works. That's how it worked with gun laws.
Yep.
They wear them down. They do subversive tactics and find a way.
Boiling frog, bro.
100%.
It's a boiling frog. That one is wild to me. That one's outright scary because people no longer have representation of those. But that's why you have this right here. There was a Washington Business Survey, February 2026. 17% of businesses in Seattle plan to... Wait, Washington Business Survey. 17% of businesses in the state plan to leave.
17%.
17%. That's up 9% from last year alone.
Whoa.
More than double. Think about that.
It'll be fine. You know what? Who's going to replace all of those citizens that leave, all of those great citizens? This comes back to the conversation that you planted in my mind a while back where you said states are competing for qualified citizens.
Yeah.
Idaho's winning.
Yes.
Other states like Idaho are winning. States like Seattle and California, or Washington, California, Oregon are losing. And who's replacing them?
People.
A great voter base.
Yeah, but it's going to be further. A lot of people, it'll be a further burden. And it sucks because there's some good ones there that are stuck.
Absolutely.
And there's no option. And I understand, man, and I feel for them, truly. But that's why, our naysayers out there are going to say, why are you guys talking about this? Well, the number one state where Washingtonians are leaving to is Idaho, by far. And that's data from IRS, U-Haul, Atlas Van Lines, like the moving companies.
Right.
And sure, are we in real estate? Yeah. But you really need to look in the mirror. Like, Washington's got to look at it and say, if you are able to remove yourself from politics just for a second and try to be objective and think about what's transpired in the last 10 years, you violated the boiling frog tactic. You cranked that. You cranked that temperature up, and they jumped out.
Mm-hmm. They pushed too far.
Like I said, 2014, Washington ranked 30th in crime rate. They're now 4th. If you look at individual tax burden then, it was always middle of the road, but now they're one of the worst. You've gotten more and more progressive when the country, man, the one thing with what happened with, during that whole deal is a lot of people got good jobs that they could do remotely. So now we've got this bit of a migration where you no longer have to be on the coast to get a high-paying job. You can choose the community where you live, and more people are doing that. How many young people now do we have look it up and say it's a lot about education freedom? A lot of people want to homeschool.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that, but I also think some of it's because they exist in a state where they have no say in what their kids are ingesting in a public education system. It's not that way here. I think you come here and you look at it and be like, all right, public school is public school, but it may be okay.
Yeah.
But they're looking for that education freedom, man.
And medical freedom.
Yes.
Not being forced to put anything in your kids that you don't want there.
And not being shamed.
Not being shamed for it.
Not being shamed for it. Actually, how about a touch of actual property ownership?
There's a novel idea, right?
It's fascinating talking to people over there when they talk about building and what they have to do. Here's the issue. We went through your permitting process. You're going to have to pay for this $5,000 environmental survey because 16 years ago there was a transsexual newt that may or may not have procreated here with a toad, and so we're going to have to go in and do this underwater evaluation of blah, 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 blah. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you look at, and it sounds nuts, but truly that's what you deal with there. And it's just, it absolutely doesn't feel like you own your own property. You lease it. And when they get this creative with how they're going to further tax you and take more money out of your pocket and tell you that they know best what to do with your money, man, it's a tough deal.
It makes me think of that. I mean, we just had Mark Fitzpatrick on the podcast. He's running for governor of Idaho. Good podcast with him, by the way. Check that one out. a big part of his platform is trying to abolish property taxes and finding other ways to make that money back through the state. And there are plenty of ways to do it. Idaho's full of incredible natural resources that could be an avenue for that. But that was a big deal. And there are other states out there doing that. I think Florida's working on that right now.
DeSantis.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's nice to think that people are thinking that way. I like that. I don't want to rent the land that I have paid for from my government. I would like to own it outright. Yeah. And that's what a tax is. Why?
I talk to people that are moving out here, and some of the common themes we get. I want 50 acres and I don't ever want to see anybody. Mm-hmm. And then you come out here and you're like, just feel it out, man.
I had one of those this morning. I had a conversation in a coffee shop with a nice young couple from Southern Washington. Yeah. And that was the exact sentiment. And I said, well, you've got a young daughter. Think about a neighborhood out here. Be great. Lots of kids around. It is not the same place than where you're coming from.
There is something to say for stepping out of the front door of a property that you own and going out into a community that you can actually be proud of, that shares your values and that you contribute directly to. That's a different kind of feeling, especially when you're just going to work. Otherwise, you just feel like a merc.
Yep.
You leave, you go, you get your pay, you come back, and then you hide in your little safe spot and hope that it stays safe. It's we've all lived somewhere else. We've lived in places like that, and it sucks.
It sucks.
The other one that got wild, dude, is the first responders pension.
I wanted to talk about that. Mm-hmm. That one is
House Bill 2034.
Disturbing as well. So what I'm gathering from that is that they're moving pension. I think it was the LEOFF Plan 1. They are they're saying any excess money in that fund is potentially could be transferred to the state general fund.
It's important. Like this one, words are important because it's not an excess; it's a surplus.
Right.
So I think if my numbers are correct, like they were sitting at a surplus of around, or not a surplus, but they were sitting around 11 billion, and then there was a surplus of 3 to 4 billion because they've been smart about how they retained their pension funds. So the state looks at that and they're like, oh, that can't be. We've contributed that. That's pretty much ours. So we're just going to take that.
Yeah.
And into the general fund, the climate commitment account.
I saw that.
$569 million for the climate commitment account.
What is the climate commitment account?
Nobody knows.
That's pretty broad.
I don't know, dude. It's maybe it's to keep those freaking wind farm things out there that use more oil
exactly
than
what I was picturing.
I don't know, and I don't think they do either. It's solar panels on all of the vacant buildings in downtown Seattle that gets 90 days of sun a year. It'll be fine. And honestly, if you existed in a community where people were proud of the state and you actually backed your cops and first responders, and then you went to them and say, we have a huge budget shortfall and here's why. You guys have a surplus of this. And then you had some sort of system with which you could go to them and ask them. There's nobody that contributes more to the community. Well, I don't want to say nobody, but that contingent of people contributes significantly to the community. But you don't get to do that unilaterally.
Right. And what happens when you take all of that excess money out and do whatever with it, and now the markets turn and now they're underfunded, right? Then what? Is the state going to make up that difference when it comes down to it?
No, you just end up another state that's operating in the red.
Right.
So because they did this correctly, they get punished.
Yeah.
And the government, again, saying, you guys have handled this so well, we're going to show you how to really spend this money because we're at a deficit.
Let's put it in climate change things. That'll do well.
Yes.
Ask California how that went.
It's wild. It's like every time you turn around and you look at something with Washington, you're like, I honestly think they're contending to be the most progressive and the worst managed.
I don't know how you could make an argument otherwise.
Dude, it's worse than Cali.
Yeah.
Honestly, right now, I'll say that candidly.
Yeah.
Worse than Minnesota, maybe. I would love to see that kid go in and look at the fraud in Seattle.
Oh, I'm sure it's coming.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
He's ticking them off, man, and working his way around.
Checking it off.
It's got to be rampant.
I feel for a lot of those folks, and I grew up there, and I'd love to be proud of the state where I grew up, but it's hard to right now, man. It's tough. Even for, there's a lot of cops that work over there and then live in Idaho, but even now they're just looking at it going, how can I, when they start talking about removing their pension, and then not trusting that the state wouldn't go after it even more. So based on what we've seen here with the income taxes, what would restrict them from creating a whole different RCW to reduce their surplus number from 11 billion to 4?
Right. Like you spend 30 years working, putting money into the system as a cop or firefighter, and you expect. In my mind, there's like no way you wouldn't get your pension, right, for the rest of your life. You've put your time in. You probably don't have any other. Maybe you've got a 457, maybe, but maybe not, because it's hard to live on that income. So maybe you have nothing other than this pension. I know plenty of guys like that, and now it's at risk of being underfunded. And who foots the bill? Washington's out of money. Is the federal government gonna bail you out? I don't know.
Honestly, I think the best thing for our country is the federal government to stop bailing out states that have terrible policies. Eventually, the states need to get treated like other businesses, right? And if you are not competing with other states or businesses, then you fail. And then you have to recalibrate, readjust, realign with the market a little bit.
Yeah.
Because right now, they can't employ cops, and they pay more. They have to. But the hidden thing over there is, let's say you bought a house, 10 years ago, assuming that you'd get appreciation based on national average, and housing prices are dropping because the policies suck.
Yes.
It's a tough deal, man.
Surplus inventory, not enough buyers because everybody's leaving.
Yeah, don't want to be all doom and gloom, but at the end of the day, man,
it's pretty doom and gloomy.
Yeah, well, just god dang, like states 100% are competing for the most valuable resource, which is productive members of society that are not a burden on the systems and the infrastructure. And Washington's not competing.
No, and the frustrating thing is there's tons of amazing people out in the central Washington, southern Washington, these red areas.
Yeah.
And they're frustrated, and I know the feeling. You're getting outvoted by dense urban populations that do not share your values. I've lived that in California. I know that feeling. And you want to fight, but I don't think this is solved in our generation. It's too far down.
Unless they're allowed to fail. And that would be devastating.
That would be devastating on a lot of things.
At some point, there's got to be something that kicks. And look, I'm not going to say that we're helping the problem either. And by we, I mean a state like Idaho that's attracting a lot of those productive that have these values, because now there's not going to be anybody there to vote.
We're stealing your best players.
Yeah, but it's a competition, man, and you guys aren't competing. If you're going to make it, I'm really glad you brought that. I can't believe you brought up sports.
I brought a sports reference.
You brought up sports. I'm so proud of you right now.
Thank you.
But think about that. So they just went, man, I have family in Bellevue. Nobody will hate this podcast more than them, by the way. They're the way we do not think the same. But they started a software company back in the 80s. They live up on Clyde Hill, like just, freaking Golden
Sounds
Mountain
fancy,
up there in Bellevue. It absolutely is. But they had courtside tickets to the Sonics, the Seattle Supersonics back in the day. I used to go to games like 2 rows back and see Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Detlef Schrempf, freaking Sam Perkins, like Nate McMillan. Like, they were studs back then. It was a lot of fun. That was like heyday of basketball. It was like MJ. And
I thought we were talking about football. Okay.
No,
I'm tracking.
No, but it gets there. So right now they're talking about bringing on another sports team into Seattle, bringing on an NBA basketball team. They already have the Seahawks, just won the Super Bowl. They've got the Sounders, super successful soccer team. They've got the Mariners, who are probably going to tank again after they had a good year last year, and then they have the Kraken and all that. It's a great sports town. It really is. What's the Millionaire's Barrel going to do when they try to sign free agents? Every single one of them is a millionaire. Don't tell me that's not going to become a part of their contract negotiation.
Yep.
And the only reason I bring that up, because at the end of the day, that's not near as important as how it impacts working class families, but it's going to be a great observation point for the direct competition. Because if you're a player and you're going to make $2 million a year annually, and you have a 9.9% tax increase if you go play in Seattle, versus you could go play in, let's just say, Nashville, right? Or you're going to go play in freaking Texas. And they are going to offer you less money, but your total take home. We do it all the time in real estate where you play with numbers. It's not all about purchase price, bro. It's a net sheet. You pull out the net sheet, but they're going to make an extra $200K in not lost taxes. That's going to be a really interesting analysis of how this goes.
Yeah, I had not thought about that.
Because they have salary caps. In most leagues, they have salary caps. Each team's given the same pot of money. States are the same freaking way. Except it's not the same pot of money because some higher industry, whatever. But that's where the competition comes into play. We're all free agents, man. We're all free agents.
Look at that. I came back to sports.
I know. Thank you. I
Like we said, we know there's a lot of great people over there. We're not trashing the people of Washington. We're trashing the policies in the government. And it sucks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think Washington is going to be an excellent example of what's to come with the progressive movement.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things going on politically that scare the crap out of me and thinking we're going to go back that way. I just wish things would, man. There's a lot of room in the middle, bro.
There is. Well, if you guys are watching this,
whatever. I don't know.
if you guys are watching this and all of these wonderful law enforcement, military, firefighting patches behind me don't give you the sweats because you're scared of that and you love that and you love the American flag and you love freedom, Idaho might be the spot for you guys. And if you're thinking that, reach out to our team. We can guide you through the process. We're not salesy at all. We will just provide you information to make the right decision for your family.
Yeah, provide you as much information as we can so you can make a good, educated decision for what's best for your family. And truly, like we mean it, there's no pressure here. Like it's got to be right for you, and sometimes it's tough. And we get it. Home prices here are up.
And we'll vet you too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll have those conversations.
Yeah.
And if you're not a good match for Idaho, we're pretty strict on that. We want the best. We want good people. Yeah. We want people that values align.
Go find somebody else, man.
Yeah. If you want to change it to Washington again, don't come here.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed.
Guys.
Shoot us a call, text, email if you want to make the move. Later.